One of the most talked about and controversial topics discussed throughout global justice systems, the death penalty. Otherwise known as capital punishment, the death penalty is controversial, irreversible, and delivers the ultimate punishment, death. The death penalty can be carried out in a variety of ways, including electric chair, firing squad, hanging, and more commonly in modern times by lethal injection. When someone is convicted of the death penalty, they are placed on death row and will go through decades of trials before they are finally executed. Shockingly, there have been many innocent people placed and even executed on death row for a crime they did not commit. Some people even argue that the death penalty is a major violation of human rights and should be abolished worldwide. Others argue if someone has taken an innocent life, what gives them the right to live themselves? The cost of housing an inmate on death row in the United States is significantly more expensive than keeping them in prison for a long period of time. This is due to the lengthy trial process that can span across multiple decades. Inmates sentenced to death in Texas cost on average $2.5 million each, and in other American states such as Maryland it's closer to $3 million each. The excess cost to convict, sentence, and execute an offender compared with the cost of life in prison without parole is about $8.5 billion for the inmates currently on death row in the United States. This means that a death penalty case can cost up to 10 times more than a comparable non-death penalty case. Although these statistics are based on the United States death row inmates, you would expect them to be relevant to New Zealand if we were to legalise the death penalty. A common point of view expressed by many New Zealanders who believe that the death penalty should be reinstated is, why should someone convicted of such violent crimes cost taxpayers significant amounts of money, keeping them in prison for the next 20, 30 or even 40 plus years? Little do they realise that the cost of keeping an inmate imprisoned on death row would come at a far greater cost financially. To validate this point of view, I discussed a number of crime-related topics including the death penalty and in particular the large portion of taxpayer money that goes into housing criminals in our prisons each year with a variety of New Zealanders. One of the main attitudes and point of views I picked up from most of the people I spoke to was that they don't want a large portion of their income going towards criminals, and in particular what would be, if legalised, death row inmates who have committed such horrific and violent crimes. The research that I've carried out regarding the financial side of legalising the death penalty has given me a better understanding of the ever-ongoing debate of how we should balance justice with making sure that the country is not spending excessive amounts of money on something that doesn't benefit the economy or our people whatsoever. Does the death penalty act as a deterrent for people considering committing highly violent crimes? I don't think so. Despite it being almost impossible to know for sure, you can look at statistics such as the graph shown on screen that shows the murder rates in the United States per 100,000 population between 1990 and 2014. It gives a direct comparison of states with and without the death penalty. This graph shows that there are higher murder rates in states who have the death penalty than states that do not. Further research has shown that a lot of the residents of states who do not have the death penalty legalised are generally of a higher economic class. This means there may be less street activity, leading to decreased violence and few offences that justify the death penalty. This may be why the murder rate is generally lower in non-death penalty states in America. Despite this, most people considering carrying out such violent crimes don't have any intention of being caught and think they can get away with it. So therefore, in my opinion, it matters very little from a psychological point of view whether the death penalty is legal or not for potential criminals being deterred from committing such violent crimes. I believe that a better way of discouraging violence is through education and supporting people before, not after they carry out these crimes worthy of the death penalty. This can start with better education from a young age, police coming into schools, particularly in lower socio-economic areas of New Zealand, and teaching children from a young age that a life of crime isn't worthwhile. There are a series of measures put in place to ensure that an innocent person is not charged with the death penalty and executed. This includes a lengthy trial process that can span across multiple decades. This is shown on the diagram on screen. Despite this, the risk of an innocent person being executed as a result of the death penalty is not out of question, as one of the main arguments against the death penalty. There have been many examples of people who were placed on death row and then found not guilty before or even after their execution. After all, once carried out, the death penalty is brutal and ultimately irreversible. Since 1973, 170 former death row prisoners in the United States have been exonerated of all charges related to the wrongful convictions that have put them on death row. This statistic is particularly alarming considering a large portion of these innocent people were only found to be not guilty after their execution had taken place. Approximately 4% of the death sentences in the United States between 1982 and 2013 sent an innocent person to death row. This is mine and many others' main point against the death penalty, and one of the many reasons why I now believe it shouldn't be made legal in New Zealand. Imagine putting yourself in the shoes of an innocent person on death row who has done nothing to break the law that justifies death, yet you have got yourself into an unfortunate series of events or situations which has seen you become wrongly convicted. Even if you end up proving your innocence, you would have wasted 5, 10, even 15 to 20 years of your life in prison, on death row, and accused of an astonishing violent crime you did not commit. When innocent death row inmates finally get released, they may not have any friends or family left, no money, and nowhere to go. They also would have been out of the mainstream world for a significant period of time and lack the skills or knowledge to find employment, leading to homelessness and serious mental and physical health problems. In conclusion, after carrying out extensive research, I've been left to question if the death penalty is worth it at all. In my opinion, there is only one positive to the death penalty, which is victim closure. Knowing that the person who killed your friend or family member won't ever be able to cause any more pain to anyone else's life can provide victims with a degree of light comfort. However, many people argue that the death penalty is in fact less cruel than life in prison without parole, and that the convict will face far greater punishment spending the rest of their life in prison, rather than taking the easy way out, death. As well as human morals being a major influence on someone's opinion around the death penalty, no one can argue against the incredible cost associated with it. The various trials and housing an inmate on death row come at a far greater cost to taxpayers than that of a convict being given life in prison without parole. With all of that being said, my opinion is now clear. Say no to the death penalty.